Hey guys, so today we're going to be going over how to find the rate of change or slope between 2 points. So the first thing we want to look at is I already have the formula for slope here. Now, if you understand this formula, good. If you don't, I'm going to go over it. So slope is commonly known as your rise over run. Rise over run. In order to get from one point to the next, what are directions? I like to think of rise over run as directions. Rise is up or down. To get to your next point, how many do you have to go up or down? Run is left or right. How many do you have to go left or right to get to your next point? Right? Now, this is your line right over here. So slope is the directions to get from one point to the next to create your line. How steep is your line? Now, where do these letters come in? Normally, we have our first point. We have x and y. X tells us left and right. Y tells us up or down. Now, when we're talking about our slope, we want to know how do we get to this very next point. So we have to have at least 2 points. We have another x and we have another y. This is where we're starting. This is where we're going. I like to think of this as my start point, x1, y1. This is where I began. This is where I'm going to, x2, y2. And now once you have your 2 points, you can plug them into your formula to get your slope, to get your directions, your overall directions. So let's say I had an example like 4, 3, and 8, 6. Now, this is where I started. So this is my x1, y1. This is where I'm going to. So this is x2, y2. That's where I'm going to. Now I'm going to plug them into my formula. Y2, I'm going to start with my change in y. So I want to know how much am I going up or down. So I'm going to do y2 minus y1. So I'm going to grab my 6 minus my 3. Now the minus is part of the formula, so that never changes. Over, now I'm going from my x2, 8 minus 4, my x1. 6 minus 3 is 3. 8 minus 4 is 4. Now this cannot be simplified any further, so that means this is my slope. That means I'd be going, this is a positive 3 over 4, so I'd be going up 3 to the right 4. So if I wanted to continue my line besides these 2 points, I wanted to have more points, I would take this and I would go up 3 and I'd go to the right 4. And I'd continue to graph that until I got a line. Now, I have a few more examples here we can go over. So I'm going to write my formula down over here. That way I have it. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Now, you could also see this written as delta y over delta x. The change in y divided by the change in x. But I don't normally like to use that. You can if you want, but I prefer the formula. It tells me exactly what I need to plug in and what. So here we have our first set of points. So I'm going to label it. This is where I'm starting. This is my x1, y1. This is where I'm going to, x2, y2. And I'm going to plug them in. So I'm going to start with my y's. I'm going to do 2 minus 7 over, I'm going to go to my x. I have negative 6 minus 11. 2 minus 5, or 2 minus 7 is negative 5. Now when you're doing a negative and a negative, addition, subtraction, keep the sign, add them together. 6 plus 11 is 17. Now, this can be simplified. Now, although there isn't a common number that goes into 5 and 17, because they both have negatives, those negatives cancel out. You're left with 5 over 17. That's your slope. It's okay to have slope in a fraction. You want it in a fraction because that means we have a rise over run. We're rising. We're going up 5, and we're going to the right 17. Those are our directions to get from one point to the next. All right, and now we've got, same thing, I'm going to label my points. This is x1, y1, x2, y2. This is where I'm going to. All right, y1 or y2, 1 minus, now this is a -8. I'm going to put this in parentheses because my formula has a negative in it. So that negative does not change, but the 8 also has a negative. So now we have two negatives right next to each other. Okay, over, we have -8 minus is part of my formula, and then I have -5. All right. Now, here's where we got to pay attention. In this case, we have a negative and a negative. That becomes a positive. When two things are right next to each other, it's as if they're multiplying. You're doing a sign times a sign. So that becomes 1 plus 8. Over, same thing on the bottom. We have a negative and a negative, so that becomes -8 plus 5. You're left with 1 plus 8 is 9 over -8 plus 5. We have different signs, so we keep the sign of the bigger number. And then we do the difference, find the difference from 5 to 8, which is 3. Now this can be simplified. What number goes into 3 and 9? That would be 3. 3 goes into 9 3 times. And 3 goes into 3 once. Now because we have a negative, it stays negative. Now that means your slope is -3 over 1. Now this negative, you have to be very careful with this negative. This negative belongs to one or the other. So you can either have -3 over 1, which is the same as just -3, or 3 over -1, which is the same thing as -3. So that negative does not go to both. It only goes to one. That means, now this will give you the same exact line. This is going to be either down 3 over right 1, or up 3 over left 1. And that's going to give you the same exact line. One point is either going to be at the top, the other one's going to be at the bottom. And that's it for finding the slope between 2 points.